Picture a guy sitting at his kitchen table on a Tuesday morning. He's 62. He's got his Social Security statement open on his laptop, and there's a half-empty cup of coffee going cold next to it. He's not panicking. He's just staring at the numbers, because he keeps hearing it. From friends at the gym, from guys on the golf course, from his brother-in-law who thinks he knows everything about money. Claim now. Lock it in. Before they cut it, and part of him wonders, should I just hit the button right now? At 62. Here's what the actual numbers say right now in 2026. The Congressional Budget Office updated their projection earlier this year. The OSI Trust Fund, the pool that pays your Social Security retirement benefits, is now projected to run dry by 2032. Not 2033 like the older reports said, 2032. And when that happens, benefits don't disappear, but they get cut automatically to match incoming payroll tax revenue. That cut is now estimated at 28%. I know how that lands. I've held my own Social Security statement and seen that warning language. And it doesn't matter how long you've been in finance or how calm you think you are about numbers. When you see a potential 28% haircut on money you spent 35 years paying into, your stomach does something. That feeling is completely valid. But the fear is one thing. What the fear is pushing you to do, that's the part we need to look at carefully. Claiming at 62 to beat the system sounds rational when you're in that headspace. It's not. And by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why, and more importantly, what you can actually do about it. No Washington drama. No doom. Just the mechanics and what they mean for your situation. Let's start with how Social Security actually works, because most people have a fundamental misunderstanding about what running out of money means here. The OSI Trust Fund is not a savings account with your name on it. It's a pay-as-you-go system. Current workers pay FICA taxes. That money flows out almost immediately to current retirees. The trust fund is essentially a buffer, a reserve built up during decades when more people were paying in than taking out. That buffer is almost gone. By 2032, according to the CBO's 2026 update, incoming payroll taxes will only cover about 72 cents of every dollar owed in benefits. Social Security doesn't shut down. The checks don't stop. But by law, they get trimmed to match what's actually coming in. That's where the 28% cut comes from. Now here's something worth knowing. In 2026, Congress raised the FICA taxable wage ceiling to $184,500. That means higher earners are now contributing more into the system than they were before. It sounds like progress, and it is, a little. But it doesn't close the gap, not even close. The structural problem is demographic, not just fiscal. There are simply fewer workers supporting more retirees than there were in 1983 when the last major fix happened. And that 1983 fix is worth pausing on for a second, because a lot of people point to it as proof that Congress will always find a way. Alan Greenspan chaired the commission. They raised the retirement age, increased payroll taxes, and made a portion of benefits taxable for higher earners. It worked. The trust fund was shored up for another 50 years. But here's what's different now. In 1983, the fix had time on its side. The changes phased in gradually over decades. The workforce was still growing. The ratio of workers to retirees was manageable. Today, 10,000 baby boomers are reaching retirement age every single day. The window for a gradual fix is much narrower. Anything Congress does now has to work faster and hit harder than what they did 40 years ago. That's a different political lift entirely. So why hasn't Congress acted? They have in small ways. But the real fix, whether that's raising the full retirement age, means testing benefits, or increasing taxes more aggressively, every one of those options costs someone something. And in an election cycle, that's a very hard vote to cast. That's not cynicism. That's just how the incentive structure works. Now let's talk about the trap, the one I see people fall into constantly. The logic goes like this. Congress will never cut benefits for people who are already retired. That's political suicide. So if I claim now at 62, I get grandfathered in. I'm protected. I've heard this from smart people. People who've spent careers in engineering, in law, in medicine. People who are very good at reading risk. And on the surface, it feels airtight. But here's what that logic is actually doing. It's betting your retirement income on a political prediction. It's assuming that the pressure of 70 million baby boomers in the voting booth will always be enough to shield current beneficiaries from any reduction. Maybe that's true. Historically, it has been. But historically is doing a lot of work in that sentence because we've never actually hit a trust fund depletion event before. We don't know exactly what happens next. We have projections. We have legal frameworks. We do not have certainty. And the cost of being wrong at 62 is not small. If you claim at 62, your benefit is permanently reduced by roughly 30% compared to your full retirement age amount. You've locked in a lower baseline for the rest of your life, including the annual KOH-LA adjustments, which compound on that lower number. You've also given up the 8% per year delayed retirement credits you would have earned by waiting towards 70. So in a scenario where Congress does protect current beneficiaries, the person who claimed early out of fear just voluntarily cut their own lifetime income by 30%. Faster than any legislation would have. That's the trap. It's not Washington that gets you. It's the panic response to Washington. The real risk isn't losing 28% of your Social Security. The real risk is what that shortfall does to the rest of your retirement picture. And that's where things get genuinely complicated. I want to be honest with you about something. For years, I told people that the math almost always favors waiting until 70. Run the break-even analysis, collect the bigger check, live long enough, and you come out ahead. I believed it. I taught it. I was missing half the picture. What I wasn't accounting for was what happens when the policy environment shifts at the same time your tax situation shifts. When those two things collide, the strategy that looked clean on a spreadsheet starts to crack. Let me show you what I mean. Start with the grandfather dilemma. The thinking is claim at 62, lock in your benefit before any cuts happen, stay protected. We already covered why that logic is shakier than it feels. But let's also look at the pure math of it. If your full retirement age benefit is $2,500 a month, claiming at 62 drops that to roughly $1,750. That's a permanent 30% reduction. Every KOH-LA increase for the rest of your life compounds on $1,750, not $2,500. Meanwhile, every year you delay past your full retirement age, your benefit grows by 8%. Wait until 70 and you're looking at around $3,300 a month. That 8% annual growth is guaranteed, inflation adjusted, and backed by the federal government. You won't find that return anywhere else with that level of certainty. So when someone claims early out of fear of a 28% future cut, they're accepting a guaranteed 30% cut right now. That's not protecting yourself. That's the trap doing exactly what it was designed to do. Now let's talk about the second trap. This one is quieter, and it's the one that can actually hollow out a retirement that looked fine on paper. Call it the tax spiral. Here's how it works. Say the 2032 cuts happen and your Social Security drops by 28%. You're now short roughly $8,400 a year compared to what you planned. You need to replace that income. Where does it come from? For most people in this situation, it comes from a traditional 401k or a traditional IRA. You withdraw the extra $8,400. That withdrawal gets added to your income for the year. And here's where the spiral starts. Social Security benefits are taxed based on what the IRS calls your provisional income, which is your adjusted gross income plus half of your Social Security benefit. The IRS has two thresholds for this. If your provisional income exceeds $32,000 as a married couple filing jointly, Up to 50% of your Social Security becomes taxable. Push past $44,000, and that number jumps to 85%. Those thresholds were set in 1984 and have never been adjusted for inflation, which means over time, more and more retirees have quietly crossed them without ever feeling like they got a raise. When you pull more from your 401k to cover the Social Security shortfall, your provisional income goes up. And if you're already sitting near one of those thresholds, even a modest withdrawal can flip the switch. So you're already getting less from Social Security. And now more of what you are getting is being taxed. Under the current 2026 tax framework, thanks to the OBBBA passed last year, the standard deduction for married couples filing jointly is $32,200. That gives you some buffer at the lower end, but it doesn't neutralize the provisional income problem. A $10,000 withdrawal from your 401k to cover a Social Security gap doesn't cost you $10,000. If it pushes you from the 12% bracket into the 22% bracket, the real cost of that withdrawal is closer to $13,000 once you account for the tax drag. You lose twice. Once from the benefit cut, once from the tax consequence of covering it. This is the scenario that neither the claim early camp nor the always wait until 70 camp fully accounts for. Both strategies, applied rigidly, can walk you straight into this. There is no one-size-fits-all answer here. Anyone who tells you otherwise is selling something. So what does a stress-tested plan actually look like? Let's run the numbers. Let's run a scenario, not a hypothetical designed to scare you. Just a realistic set of numbers that a lot of people in their late 50s and early 60s are actually sitting with right now. You need $80,000 a year to live comfortably in retirement. Your plan assumes Social Security covers $30,000 of that, and your 401k distributions cover the other $50,000. Clean, straightforward, reasonable. Now it's 2032. The OSI Trust Fund hits depletion. The 28% cut kicks in automatically. Your Social Security check drops from $30,000 a year to $21,600. You're now $8,400 short. If you're unprepared, the move feels obvious. Just pull the extra $8,400 from your 401k. Simple patch, right? Not quite. Because that $8,400 is a gross number. You don't keep all of it. To actually net $8,400 after taxes, depending on your bracket, you may need to withdraw closer to $11,000. That extra $2,600 doesn't go to your mortgage or your groceries. It goes to the IRS, and it compounds. Every year you're pulling more than planned from your 401k, you're accelerating the depletion of that account. Sequence of returns risk, the danger of drawing down your portfolio faster than your investments can recover, starts working against you 5 to 8 years earlier than your original plan assumed. What looked like a 30-year runway starts looking like 22. That's the fragility path. Now let's run the same scenario with one structural difference. Same person, same $80,000 need. Same 28% Social Security cut in 2032. But this person spent the years between now and then moving a portion of their traditional IRA or 401k into a Roth account. Not all of it, just enough. When 2032 arrives and that $8,400 gap opens up, they fill it from the Roth. That withdrawal is completely tax-free. It doesn't touch their provisional income. It doesn't push more of their Social Security into taxable territory. The tax spiral never starts. Same external shock. Completely different outcome, I'll be honest with you. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know if Congress will find a fix before 2032, or whether they'll keep kicking the can like they have for the past 2 decades. What I do know is that the math doesn't lie. And the only variable you actually control is how your assets are structured before that date arrives. The difference between these two people isn't income. It's not luck. It's not even investment returns. It's optionality. The Roth account gives you a tax-free bucket to draw from that exists entirely outside the provisional income calculation. It's a lever. The other person doesn't have that lever. This is what financial resilience actually looks like at this stage of life. Not predicting what Washington does, not timing the market, just making sure that when the external environment changes, and it will change, your plan doesn't crack under the pressure. Two paths. One leads to pulling more than you planned from a taxable account every single year for the rest of your retirement. The other leads to a Tuesday morning in 2032 where you read the news about Social Security cuts and you feel almost nothing. Because you already accounted for it. We're in 2026 right now. That gives you 6 years. That's not nothing. That's actually a meaningful window to build the buffer. Here's how to use it. 6 years is enough time to change the outcome. Not if you overhaul everything at once, but if you make 3 specific structural moves that work together. Step 1. Build your margin of safety. Stop planning around 100% of your projected Social Security benefit. Open whatever tool you use, whether that's a spreadsheet, Bolden, or a similar retirement planner, and run your numbers at 72%. That's the post-cut level based on the CBO's 2026 projection. Plug in that reduced number and ask one question: does my cash flow still work? If it does, you've already bought yourself something most people don't have. Peace of mind that isn't dependent on a Senate vote. If it doesn't, now you know exactly how large the gap is. Not a vague anxiety, a number. And a number is something you can work with. Step 2. Start Roth conversions now, while the window is open. This is the most time-sensitive move on the list, and it's the one most people delay until it's too late to matter. Under the current 2026 tax structure, thanks to the OBBBA, the standard deduction for married couples filing jointly sits at $32,200. The 12% and 22% brackets are still in place. That means there's a real opportunity right now to convert a portion of your traditional IRA or 401k into a Roth, pay tax at today's relatively low rates, and build a tax-free bucket that exists completely outside the provisional income calculation. Here's the practical math. If you're in the 12% bracket and you convert $20,000 this year, you pay roughly $2,400 in tax now. In exchange, that $20,000, plus however it grows between now and 2032, comes out completely tax-free when you need it. No impact on how much of your Social Security gets taxed. No bracket creep, no spiral. You're not avoiding taxes. You're paying them at the lowest rate available before the rules potentially change again. Every year you wait on this is a year of conversion space you can't get back. Step 3. Rethink what Social Security actually is. Most people treat Social Security as their primary income source in retirement. That framing is what makes every headline about cuts feel like a personal financial emergency. And it's what drives people toward decisions like claiming at 62 out of fear, locking in a permanent reduction to protect themselves from a potential future one. Try a different frame. Social Security is longevity insurance. It's a government-backed, inflation-adjusted income stream specifically designed to protect you against the risk of living longer than your money does. That's its actual function. Not to be your salary, to be your floor. When you see it that way, the claiming decision looks completely different. Take 2 people, same full retirement age benefit of $2,500 a month. The first person is 62, in good health, with a solid 401k and a Roth account they've been building for the past few years. For them, delaying to 70 makes a strong case. They have income to bridge the gap. Their investments are working in the meantime, and they're buying themselves $3,300 a month guaranteed for life, inflation adjusted, starting at 70. That's a powerful longevity hedge. The second person is 62, has some health concerns, a smaller investment portfolio, and a spouse who earned significantly less over their career. For them, the calculus shifts. Waiting until 70 might not make sense if the break-even age pushes past realistic life expectancy, or if the spouse's survivor benefit situation changes the math. Claiming earlier, at full retirement age or even slightly before, might actually be the more rational move given their specific structure. Same benefit amount. Completely different right answer. This is why the always claim early crowd and the always wait until 70 crowd are both selling you something that doesn't exist. There is no universal strategy. There is only your health, your asset structure, your spouse's situation, and how much tax-free income you've built to absorb a shock. I have a friend who started moving money into Roth at 60. Methodically, not dramatically. A portion each year, staying inside his bracket. He's in his mid-60s now. He drinks his coffee in the morning, reads the news about Social Security debates in Washington, and genuinely doesn't feel the anxiety that most people feel when they see those headlines. Not because he's wealthy, because his plan doesn't depend on Congress getting it right. That's the difference structure makes. The control was never on Capitol Hill. It's been on your kitchen table the whole time. Last weekend, I finished updating my own Roth conversion structure. Ran the numbers, adjusted the allocation, closed the laptop. Then I made a cup of tea and took my dog for a walk. And somewhere on that walk, I realized I hadn't thought about 2032 once the entire time. Not because the problem went away. The trust fund is still depleting on schedule. Congress is still doing what Congress does. None of that changed. What changed was that my plan no longer required them to get it right. That's what clarity actually feels like. Not excitement, not relief exactly, just a quiet kind of steadiness. I've watched a lot of people spend their final working years in a low-grade anxiety about things they can't control. The headlines, the projections, the political noise. And I've watched others, people with similar incomes and similar balances, move through the same period with a completely different energy. The difference was almost never the size of their portfolio. It was whether their plan could absorb a shock without cracking. Resilient retirement planning isn't about predicting what Washington does next. It's about building something that doesn't need the prediction to be right. You don't need Congress to save Social Security for your plan to work. You need a tax-free bucket for when the gap opens. You need a stress-tested cash flow at 72% of your projected benefit. You need to stop treating Social Security as the foundation and start treating it as the insurance layer it was always meant to be. Those aren't complicated moves. They're just deliberate ones. This channel exists because these conversations don't happen enough in plain language, without the jargon, without the sales pitch, and without the panic. If that's what you're here for, hit subscribe. Every video is built around the same idea. Your retirement plan belongs to you, not to whoever's in office. I'll see you in the next one.